So I'm going to talk about leadership, and I should say at the outset that well, as it says there, I'm an economist, and actually I'm an economic theorist. What that means is I look at the world and I try to say, okay, can I come up with some explanation for what I'm seeing? So I'm going to offer some explanations for a phenomenon I saw, and hopefully you'll buy into my explanation, and that will be useful to you in your careers. Okay, so you've probably heard a lot about leadership in various sessions like this and other training that you've had in your career, and a lot of that is good stuff, but it tends to come from the perspective of either psychology or sociology, which are perfectly fine fields, but I'm going to offer a slightly different take on leadership. So I'm going to take a take of thinking about leadership from the perspective of being strategic. Okay, so I'm not going to try to teach you how to be charismatic. I couldn't do that even if I wanted to do that. Or I'm not going to teach you various psychological tricks to get people to buy into what you want to do. I'm going to work from a world in which everyone, as if they came from planet Vulcan, right? So they're all very rational people. And so how do you, working with other really rational people, get them to do what you want? Okay, so that's where we're coming from. Okay, so in some sense, there's nothing new about thinking about leadership strategically, right? You can go all the way back to the Prince, right? Machiavelli, all about how to be very shrewd as a leader. So it's really about being strategic. And if you want to be a little bit more recent, we can go to this guy Max Weber, famous sociologist, and he coined the phrase charismatic leadership. Now, when we hear charismatic leadership, we think about people who are really charismatic, Bill Clinton, for example. Okay, but that's not quite what he meant. What he meant by charismatic leadership are leaders who are leaders because other people believe in them and are willing to follow them. Okay? Now, it might correlate with being a Bill Clinton, but it need not correlate with being a Bill Clinton. So even if you don't feel that you have the kind of charisma of a major politician or Steve Jobs or someone like that, you can still be an effective leader as long as you can figure out ways of getting other people to believe in you and to follow you. So that's what this is about. Okay, now think about things from the flip side. All right? So I'm saying, how do you get people to follow you and believe you? Well, part of leadership is actually realizing that you need to convince the people that you want to follow you that you're not misleading them. Okay? So part of the art of leadership is really figuring out a way to get the people you want to follow you to trust you. Okay? Be convinced that you are not misleading them. Okay? So let me give you a very mundane example. So as many of you know, California underfunds its schools. The University of California, very underfunded. But, okay? But even its elementary schools and middle schools and high schools are underfunded. And so in California, organizations like the Parent-Teacher Association are very important for trying to get things up to snuff. Now, a very long time ago, when my daughter was a little girl, my wife became, through no fault of her own, the president of the PTA. So now she's a leader. But all the people she's trying to lead are volunteers, right? She can't boss them around. So she is, by Weber's notion, a charismatic leader. They're only going to follow her if they believe her. And as I said, I'm an economic theorist. So I sit around and I watch people. And I try to figure out, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? And what general lesson can I draw from it? So I watched my wife. All right. And I discovered some things. So one thing I discovered is that she got a lot better turnout at events such as, cleanup days at the school, clean up the schoolyard, or meetings in the evening, if she advertised that she was bringing snacks. Okay. Now you might have a very simple explanation for this phenomenon. You say people went because they wanted the snacks. Okay. Maybe. But I do live in a really nice middle-class neighborhood. And are people really going to give up an evening or half a weekend to get those pastries? I don't think so, right? So So there has to be something more to snacks as a way of getting people to show up than simply the snacks themselves. All right? So what's the power of snacks? Okay. The other thing I noticed, and this is not a picture of my wife, by the way, in case you're wondering. Anyway, so is if my wife got out in front and said, you know, I have contributed $100 to this thing, contributions were much bigger. If she said, everyone, I want you to show up at 1 o'clock. I will be there at 10 a.m., however, getting things ready for the cleanup day or building the shed to put the earthquake supplies in or whatever it was that they were doing, she'd get much better turnout or many more contributions. So that's leading by example. So again, why is this effective? Why is leading by example an effective way to lead? Okay, so I thought about these things, and I realized that both leading by sacrifice and leading by example are ways of convincing followers that you're not misleading them. Right? Because think about the motives my wife has to mislead her followers. Right? Some activities are more worthwhile than other activities. But if a bunch of parents come and give a bunch of money or do a bunch of activities, it benefits my daughter. Right? Whether it's really worthwhile for them, who the heck cares? It's my daughter that I care about. Okay? My wife's a little bit more selfless, probably didn't quite think this way, but all right. But still, the other parents might think like me and say, well, you know, obviously, you know, she wants us to do a boatload of stuff because that benefits her daughter. All right? So how do we know this is really something that's going to be worthwhile not only for her daughter, but for my child too? All right? So she has to come up with ways to convince them that, yeah, these are really important things. And so I'm going to try to convince you that leading by sacrifice and leading by examples are ways in which you can convince your followers that, yeah, what you're doing is really important and that they should believe you when you say it's really important. Okay, so let me give you a simple example to try to make things perhaps a little bit more concrete and perhaps convince you a little bit more about what I'm talking about, and also for those of you who've never seen a game theory model, give you a little flavor of that as well. Okay, so this is hopefully legible in the back row. So we have a leader, and she has 9 followers. We've got 10 people in total. And each person can either work hard or not. Okay, so we're going to make life very simple. We're not going to have, you know, various levels of work. You either work, you don't work. All right? Life is simple. So that's one of the things economic theorists do, is we make life simple so we can actually solve the models that we create. All right. Working hard costs a person 20. You could say it's the equivalent of $20. It could be 20 happiness units, whatever you want. It's just, you know, people generally don't like to work hard, all else being equal. Okay? If you don't work hard, it costs you nothing. And there are also 2 possible productivity states or returns to this effort, high or low. And we're going to assume that regardless of a state, if you don't work hard, you don't contribute anything to the total pie or pool. If the productivity state is high, then by working hard, you contribute 300 to the pie. And again, we can think about it in whatever units you want. Dollars, cents, happiness units, doesn't really matter. Okay? If the productivity is low, however, working hard only contributes 10 to the pie. Okay? So that's the notion of productivity states. Some high productivity state, you're working hard, lots produced. Productivity stays low, you're working hard, doesn't produce so much. Okay? And we're going to share the pie at the end of the day equally among the 10 children, or 10 people rather. So you can think about going back to a school, right? If we build an earthquake shed to keep supplies and buy supplies to, you know, for the kids in case of an earthquake, we're helping everybody, right? And it's going to be more or less shared equally among all the children. Okay. Now let's suppose that everyone actually knew the productivity state was high. When it's high, what would happen? Well, would you work hard? Well, if you work hard, then you're going to add 300 to the pool, and you're going to incur a private cost of 20. you get 1/10 of the pool, so what's the effect on your net payoff from your working hard? Well, you've added 300 to the pool. You get 1/10 of that. That's 30, less the 20 private cost you incur, so your payoff is 10. Net payoff is 10, your contribution. If you don't work hard, then as I said, you add nothing to the pool. On the other hand, you incur no cost. So you get 1/10 of what you've contributed, which is nothing. So 1/10 of 0 is 0, minus 0 equals 0. Well, 10 is bigger than 0, so if you knew that the productivity state was high, it would be rational for you to work hard as an individual. What if you knew the productivity state was low? Should you work hard? Well, if you do, you add 10 to the pool, and you incur a private cost of 20. So already you can see what the answer is going to be, but we'll just go through the steps anyway. You get 1/10 of the pool. So the effect on your net payoff is you've added 10 to the pool. You get 1/10 of that. That's 1. Less 20. That's minus 19. Again, if you don't work hard, you add nothing to the pool. You incur no cost. You get 1/10 of nothing. Less 0 is 0. 0 is bigger than minus 19, so it would be rational for you not to work hard if you knew the productivity state was low. Okay, now here's where it gets interesting. In many situations, people don't know, right? They're trusting or relying on the leader to have this kind of information. So let's suppose only the leader knows whether it's the high productivity state or the low productivity state. Now what happens? Okay. Notice the leader has an incentive to mislead, to claim the state is always high regardless of the truth, right? Because it makes the pool bigger. People are adding stuff to the pool. She gets a share of it, right? Even though it's not worth it for them if it were really the low state. Okay? So in particular, if you just want to see the math, if she fools everybody to working hard, so that's 9 other people, they each contribute 10 because it's the low productivity state. They've worked hard, but they're only contributing 10. 9 times 10 is 90. She gets 1/10 of that. That's 9. 9 is bigger than 0. So she should say lie if she thought she could get away with it and claim it's the high state, even if it isn't, if she thought people would believe her. Okay, well, some caveats to that. We'll get to that in a moment. All right, of course, right, remember, we're talking about a world where everyone comes from planet Vulcan. They're all unbelievably rational people. So they can see through this. They can do the exact same mental calculations we've all done together. So they say, whoa, she has an incentive to mislead us. We should not necessarily believe her when she tells us it's the high state. So what should they do if all they hear is an announcement from her? Well, they should do the following. They should say, okay, well, there's some probability the state is high, and there's some probability the state is low. And now I'm going to sneak in a little bit of algebra in on you, so hopefully no one's going to get too upset with me. So let's just let P be the probability the state is high. Well, of course, we know the flip side must be 1 minus P. The probability is the probability the state is low. If you work hard, not knowing what the state is, what do you expect to get? Well, with probability P, you're in the high productivity state. So when you contribute, you're producing 300. When you work hard, you're contributing 300. You get 1/10 of that. With probably 1 minus P, it's really the low productivity state. So when you work hard, you're only contributing 10. You get 1/10 of that, or 1. Do all the algebra to simplify this expression. And it costs you 20. Do all the algebra to simplify this expression. That's 29 times P, the probability that it's the high state, minus 19. If you don't work hard, right, we've already done this calculation a few times now, expected net effect on own payoff is 0. Should you work hard or not? Well, if 29 times P minus 19, what you expect to get if you work hard is less than 0, then it would be rational for you never to work hard. Okay? What does that value of P? Well, if P is less than 19 divided by 29, which is about 0.656, you would never work hard. So if you thought the probability of the high productivity state is less than 65%, if you're ignorant of the state, you would not work hard. So even if it's, highly productive half the time, or 60% of the time, or 64% of the time, it would be rational for you not to work hard. Okay? All right, now, that's a bad outcome because obviously there are many states, in fact, perhaps the majority of states, 64% is a majority, of states in which you should actually be working hard. You'd want to work hard if you only could trust the leader. Right? So, here's where leading by sacrifice and leading by example can come to the rescue. So let's talk about leading by sacrifice. Suppose the leader can make a sacrifice at the time she makes a claim about the state. And I'm not talking about, back in the olden days when they took people up to the top of the temple and, drove a stone knife into their chest or anything. Something a little bit more pleasant than that, okay? In particular, she's going to give the followers S, some amount of money or something. That's the total amount she's going to give them. So that's the total amount of the snacks she's giving them when she claims the state is high. Observe that if S is greater than 9, 9, remember, is her payoff if she lies about the state and everyone nonetheless works hard. So it's a low productivity state. She lied. Everyone worked hard. She'd get 9. If the sacrifice is bigger than that 9, she would have no incentive to offer the sacrifice. Right? Because even if it fooled people into working hard, she's lost out. She's paid more out in snacks than she's getting back. Okay? Right? And we can just do the calculation, right? She fools everybody. So 9 people each produce 10. She gets 1/10 of that. That's 9 minus S. Okay, it's less than 0. On the other hand, provided the sacrifice is less than 270, she's willing to make that sacrifice if it convinces the followers that the state is high. Let's do the math. State is high. Each follower's contribution, if he works hard, is 300. There's 9 followers. 9 times 300, that's 2,700. Divided by 10, that's 270. That's the 270 here. Minus S, that's bigger than 0. So she's willing to make a sacrifice anywhere between 9 and 270 if it convinces the followers that the state is truly high. And she would not do that if the state were truly low. So if you were a follower, you see, wow, she made a sacrifice of 20 or 11 or whatever, state must be good. I can trust her. I can trust her claim that, yes, this is a really important project. I should give up half of my Saturday to go build a shed to put earthquake supplies in. Okay? All right, so in terms of pastries, right, because we always have to translate it back into food, right, you need to bring enough snacks that it convinces the followers that you're not trying to simply fool them. They have to believe that the sacrifice is big enough that you would not make that if the state were not good. If it was not, it was a low productivity state. I'm going to break this and I'm going to get in trouble. All right. What about leading by example? Well, leading by example can also come to the rescue. So again, suppose that the followers can see whether the leader works hard or not. Right? They see her contribution to the cause. They see that she's gone out and bought a bunch of supplies already for the earthquake shed. Or they see that she's getting there 2 hours before they are, or whatever. Okay? And suppose that the followers believe that the leader only works hard if she thinks it's the high state. Okay? The leader has no incentives to fool them by working hard when it's really the low state. Why? Well, if she did that, she herself's only going to have produced 10. She's fooled 9 people into working hard. They're only going to add 10. 10 plus 9 times 10, that's 100, divided by 10. Remember, she only gets 1/10 of it. That's 10. 10 minus 20 is minus 10. That's less than 0, right? And she gets 0 if she just, said, it's the bad state, guys, stay home, right? But she does have an incentive to work hard if it's the high state, right? She adds 300. She's caused her 9 followers to add 300. Okay, 300 plus 270, that's 3,000. Divided by 10, that's 300 minus 20, that's 280. That's her payoff. That's bigger than 0. Okay? So by leading by example, she convinces her followers, hey, this really is the high state. I too should show up for the cleanup day or whatever activity it is. Okay, so in practical terms, you have to be if you're a leader, you have to be visibly committed to your important projects. You can't just say, oh, this is an important project, guys. I'll see you. I'm heading home, work all weekend. I'll be here Monday. Hope you've done a good job. Right? It doesn't work that way. Right? You got to be there all weekend too. Right? Or you got to stay late too. You got to be visibly committed to your important projects because that's how your followers understand that, yeah, this is really important. She wouldn't do that if it weren't really important. And if you want to think about classic examples of leadership, right? In the olden days, right, where was the leader of the army? He wasn't behind the lines, he was in front. Right? Okay? Or you think about more modern days, right? Where are the leaders that we admire, right? They're out in front, right? Martin Luther King is leading the march to Selma, right? He's out in front, right? He's saying, look, I really believe this. You guys should follow me, and I'm proving to you that I really think this is important and worthwhile because I'm putting myself in the most vulnerable position, right? So you know I'm really committed, and this is really important, and you should follow me. Okay. A few more words about this. Then we'll talk about another type of thing with leadership if I still have time.
5 minutes?
5 minutes? Yeah, I think I can do it. All right. So, in a richer model, so this was, you might say, wow, that was a lot of math for late in an afternoon, but you can do this with even more math, I promise you. And if you do that, then you find out that one of the things that leading by example does is essentially increases the pool of incentives. Why? Because if I'm the leader and I know that you're kind of keying off what I do, I know that how hard I work influences how hard you work, so that makes me want to work harder. That's adding incentives to me. If you've added incentives to me, I can sort of give you back some of my extrinsic incentives, some shares of the stuff to you. Now you're all going to work harder independent of the fact that I'm also working harder. So we've increased the pool of incentives, so we get everyone working harder. So an organization in which only the leader has information but leads by example will outperform one in which the information is widely dispersed because we can create new incentives in this way. Okay? So you can sometimes do better by concentrating information in a leader who leads by example than by dispersing the information widely. Okay, 4 minutes. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is there's another way in which a leader can convey information and have it be believed, and that's when she's developed a reputation for honesty. Okay? So when leader and followers interact repeatedly with no known end date, the leader can develop a reputation for honesty. Okay, so same situation as before. Let's imagine the probability of the high state in any period is less than that magic cutoff of 65%. And let's let beta denote how likely it is we're going to play tomorrow if we played today. So that's just our survival probability. Okay? If the leader trashes her reputation, that is, she lies, then followers are never going to believe her again. Okay? And if they never believe her, they're never going to work hard because that magic probability is less than 65%. What's the expected payoff then to a leader from being believable? Well, if she's believable and she's thinking about a future period, she doesn't know what the state's going to be. She only knows, am I believable in the future? Well, with probability, it's a high state. She's going to induce 9 people to work hard. She's going to get 300 from each of them. She gets one, or they're each going to contribute 300. She's going to get 1/10 of all of that. That's worth 270 times P. So the expected payoff to her, if she admits the current state is bad, she's honest when it's painful to be honest. She gets 0 today. But the next period, which might occur with probability beta, she expects to get 270 times P, 2 periods or 2 days in the future, so that we have to multiply that by beta squared because the probability we survive to tomorrow times the probability we survive to the day after tomorrow times 270 times p, da, 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 da. Simplifies to that expression. You have to take my word for that, I'm afraid. Payoff if you lie, right? You claim a bad state is good. You fool everybody today. They all work hard, but you're only going to get 10 contributions from each of them. 9 times 10, that's 90. You get 1/10 of that, that's 9. But thereafter, no one ever works hard again. So 0 plus 0 plus 0. So you just get 9. Do you want to do this? Well, remember, if you maintain your honesty, your payoff is 270 times p times this fraction. If you lie, your payoff is 9. Is this bigger than that? Well, yes, it is. If the probability of repeating is not less than this cutoff, just to give you an example, let's suppose the probability of the high productivity state is 1/2. Then you want to maintain a reputation if the probability of getting to play tomorrow is bigger than 1/16, which is about 6%. Okay? Notice the probability of repeating can be low, but it can't be 0. Okay, so a general rule is people stop playing nicely when they see the end coming. All right? All right, so even from a Machiavellian perspective, honesty can be the best policy. Right? You're not doing it because you're honorable. You're just doing it because you want people to get the right outcome. Okay? You should be honest, of course, because it is the right, it's moral, but all right. Ability to maintain reputation. Economists don't worry about morality so much. All right. Anyway, ability to maintain reputation requires a high enough probability of repeated interaction. It can't be 0. And this is why reputation can evaporate regardless of behavior if others see you're about to leave. So my wife is only president of the PTA for a year. People don't know her, and they don't know what other future interactions are going to have with her. So she can't necessarily develop a reputation for honesty. Right? She has to resort to sacrifice or example. But if you're playing repeatedly with people, they don't know when you're leaving, you can develop this reputation. There's actually a general rule about cooperation. It ceases when folks see the end coming. Robert mentioned that I was interim dean of the business school. When I started out, people didn't know whether some idiot would make me the permanent dean. They had common sense, and they didn't. But early on, people were, maybe he'll be the dean, And people were really nice to me. And they did what I wanted them to do. And then it was announced someone else would be the dean. And, all right. I mean, a lot of people were still nice. I have really great colleagues. But enough people, weren't honest with me, stopped doing what I wanted, figured they'd wait me out, that I realized, yeah, this theory is right. All right, thank you.
Any questions? 1 or 2 questions from the audience? Thank you so much.